Hi, everyone, and welcome to the Better Minds channel. As mental health therapists, we really want to destigmatize seeking help and getting your questions answered. These kind of chit chats offer a way for you to not just get to know us, but also hear about topics we are so passionate about when it comes to working with our clients. So, to start off, I'm Brittany Webb, the founder of Better Minds Counseling and Services, and I'm also a licensed therapist. You can find more information about the practice and about both of us below. But I want to take a moment to introduce Erik Osterlund, also from Better Minds Counseling and Services. He is an associate licensed therapist and a group therapist at the practice. Erik specializes in anxiety disorders, depression, borderline personality disorder, and OCD. I'm excited for Erik to expand on OCD today, so let's take it from here. Um, so Erik, for people who may not have heard of this before, what is relationship OCD and how is it different from maybe like normal relationship doubts?
Yeah, that's a great question. So, relationship OCD, it's also called ROCD. It's a form of OCD where the compulsions typically revolve around a fear of not having a good quality relationship with a loved one, friends, partners, family members. And so how this sort of differs from traditional fears of, like losing that partner, losing that friend, the OCD kind of latches on and it latches to that fear of losing that relationship and gets you to engage in a lot of reassurance seeking behaviors and a lot of behaviors that ultimately push people away. If you're kind of constantly checking, like, is our relationship okay? Are we okay? A lot of the times we lose sight of the actual relationship in the moment.
I really appreciate you kind of mentioning about the different kind of relationships because I think so many times we assume when we're talking about a relationship that it's like an intimate or partner relationship, but this is really, can be more than that of like friends and even family members with that.
Mhm.
Um, yeah, that is so great. And I think I also heard of you mentioning that it it the relationship OCD part really is exaggerate or like more intense kind of doubts than what maybe like normal relationship doubts really come up.
Yeah, and another typical difference between maybe like that traditional general anxiety versus the OCD is that there is kind of like the fight or flight response going off. So
Mhm.
instead of it kind of being that like, anxiety, it's there for a reason. It can be helpful for us, but when that fight or flight is going off, when we're thinking about our relationships, then it gets us to go into action and try to make sure that we can find certainty where maybe there really isn't any. And, that's the hardest part is learning to sit with that uncertainty.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a really tough space to really be in.
Mhm.
Um, when I know with OCD that there's, the obsessions with comes with like, right, a common one's like intrusive thoughts that people think of. And right, the other part is compulsions. And I've heard you mention about compulsions, but what are some common intrusive thoughts or fears even that people with relationship OCD or ROCD experience that maybe is often gets misunderstood?
Yeah. So some of the common intrusive thoughts are like, do I love my partner enough? Kind of like obsessing about, trying to put a number on the quality or at least find some certainty in the quality of the relationship. You could be wondering, like, am I in the right relationship? Is this the right one for me? Um, and typically, those who are experiencing ROCD, they engage in like rumination, and over analyzing social situations. So, a
Mhm.
lot of the times, like kind of going back and analyzing, like, did I say something offensive here? Did this joke land? Was this awkward? And, then afterwards, like leading up to a social event, maybe ruminating about making sure they don't say certain things, or it really kind of controls their behaviors, so that it's almost like the person that's showing up in the relationship is more OCD than it is the actual person, seeking that relationship out.
That's so interesting. And hearing about kind of the overanalyzing, I know a lot of folks who kind of seek that reassurance then, kind of like that making sure everything's okay and we're okay in this relationship, like I'm being a good friend and everything. Um,
Mhm.
why does reassurance, like asking friends, Googling, or even checking feelings, like why does reassurance often make ROCD worse instead of better?
Yeah, that's a really great question, because reassurance seeking is the most common compulsion I see with ROCD, and it feels good in the short term. Like, our brain is wanting that quick relief, and especially in this society, we just want that instant
Mhm,
gratification. So our brain is trying to, like, find the easiest way to give us relief, and not really thinking about the sort of long-term effects of that. And so a lot of the times, like, you get that moment of reassurance, but maybe that opens up another worry or another thought, or maybe there's some uncertainty in the reassurance that they provided you. So it sort of becomes this kind of never ending chase. It feels like, okay, if I just ask reassurance one more time, then maybe I'll feel okay. But we've noticed over time, like, the more that you engage in the compulsion, the more that, like, the fear, it kind of stays big, because OCD is telling you, like, these relationships are working because of all of these compulsions. And a lot of the times when we start breaking out of some of that reassurance seeking, we start to
mhm,
see how the compulsions were actually negatively impacting the relationship, or like our ability to be present in the moment with that person or friend.
mhm. I think it's so much like, right, like the compulsion's just slapping a Band-Aid on it, and it's really it's not holding together, and you just keep piling them on thinking it's going to stick, but it's really not.
Yeah, like, it would be a good metaphor might be like trying to put a Band-Aid on a broken bone. Like, maybe it'll hold
Mhm,
the bones together for a second, but maybe we need to spend more time making a cast, like, doing a little bit harder work, being more uncomfortable for a little bit longer, but seeing that longer term benefit and, like, relief over time.
yeah. Ugh. When it makes me then really think about the maybe a kinda other side to this of, like, if someone is constantly asking, like, "What if this isn't the right relationship?" Like, "What if this is a terrible relationship that I'm experiencing with my friend or family member?" Like, what's one important thing you'd want them to know if they're kind of having these questions?
Yeah. So if you're wondering if you're in the right relationship or not, something that I really would like to let you all know is that if you're wondering about this, like, there is no other person on earth who knows you better than yourself. And a lot of the times, through reassurance seeking about the status of the relationship, those questions that your partner, your friend hears, like, is this relationship good? Is it great? Like, eventually they start questioning it, and they start thinking, like, well, why are they asking so much? Are we really not in a good relationship? So, you know, the compulsions of asking for reassurance and receiving that reassurance, it definitely sort of becomes a slippery slope, because the more you're checking in about the status of the relationship, the more
Mhm,
that, a friend or partner is kind of also thinking, like, wait, should I be questioning this more? And it may actually lead to, the fear of actually losing that partner, but not due to it being right or wrong, but just because of the presence of so many, reassurance questions.
I can see it as being really like pushing that person away then if it's kind of constant questioning and yeah, just questioning their kind of relationship.
Yeah. And, ultimately, we want to find that sort of internal reassurance in ourselves of like being able to accept the uncertainty that, relationships take two people and we aren't always going to know what that other person is thinking. And, finding a balance of being able to communicate and information seek rather than reassurance seek, and kind of finding that balance because it can be really tricky, getting in that cycle of needing that reassurance. And you know part of breaking that cycle is sitting with some of that uncertainty through some exposure therapy.
Yeah. So I guess maybe tell me a little bit more about exposure therapy or ERP and how does this type of therapy help people stop letting ROCD kind of run rampant in their relationships?
Yeah. So exposure response prevention, or ERP, it's one of the most evidence-based treatments for OCD and other anxiety disorders. So what ERP involves is slowly exposing yourself to fears related to your OCD theme. So the goal of the treatment is to habituate, learn to manage the anxiety associated with relationships. um, so an example of one of these exposures might be, let's say, if you're in a friendship, like maybe you haven't been talking to your friend in a while and you really are kind of afraid of sharing your opinion around them because you don't want them to disagree with you. You want your friends to like you. So maybe an exposure we might have you do is like share an opinion with that friend and then have you sort of sit with the uncertainty, like resist asking for that reassurance. So the two parts of ERP are basically exposing yourself to that fear of like, my friend may not agree with my opinion, and
Mhm.
then following it up with response prevention, which is not seeking out that reassurance. And what that does is kind of produces anxiety that we can slowly habituate to over time. Like, it's about frequency and consistency with some exposures, because the more you try to avoid the fears, the more that you try to just seek the reassurance, the stronger you'll notice like the intrusive thoughts become stronger. The compulsions become a little bit more naggy. And so ERP is a way to sort of break the cycle by sitting with a little bit of anxiety, but making sure that it's manageable as we kind of work up an exposure hierarchy that we would create together.
I really like that. And I think so often what I think of with ERP is really building back in that kind of confidence in yourself and being able to, right, be in these uncomfortable situations because we're presented with them constantly throughout the day, and who knows when at times that we can kind of confidently be in those situations and know that things are going to be okay. But it takes, right, this kind of practice through the hierarchy and building this out to really regain that.
Yeah. And it really is all about like taking your confidence back, taking control over your actions, and, being better able to manage your relationship with your thoughts and your anxiety. Like, a lot of the times OCD is the one in the driver's seat, and ERP kind of helps you take back some of that control, and, in a really empowering way. Like, a lot of times, after exposures, a lot of people say like, it was hard, but I feel really accomplished and I'm like proud of myself for doing that.
Mm. Yeah, it needs to get out of the driver's seat for sure.
Yeah,
But when
definitely.
I and I guess in speaking about kind of OCD getting out of that driver's seat, what are some maybe resources that can help someone who's experiencing ROCD or just OCD in general?
Yeah. So we have wonderful therapists at Better Minds Counseling. I myself am taking individuals, and there's a couple of other great therapists within the Better Minds services. Additionally, I'll be starting up a caregiver support group. So it's a support group for caregivers of people who are experiencing OCD and might need some extra help. Because with ROCD, caregivers can also be helpful in trying to break some of the reassurance seeking, or there's certain ways to help support the work that the client might be doing in their individual therapy. Um, and additionally, for any clinicians who are interested in learning more about OCD or anxiety disorders, I also have consultations open. So the information will be below, and you can schedule a time to sort of talk about any OCD or anxiety related questions that you might have.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Eric. This was really great, I think, to highlight relationship OCD because I do see it pop up quite often. I think it's kind of one of the newer subtypes that's really been getting a lot of, I think, highlight. So I appreciate it. And thank you to everyone else for joining us. Like we said, we'll have the resources listed below, like with the website and how to get into contact with us. And tune in next time.
Thanks for having me, Brittany.
Yeah, thank you, Eric.